Hi everyone. No major news today and markets did not move a whole lot, but let's see if we can find a little bit more information about what's going to happen this week. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So looking at fear and greed, we're at a 64, 62 on Friday. We can see just a smidgen of a step higher. We're very high, very close to that extreme greed level, but not quite there. That happens at 75, I believe. So 75, 76 right there, just a little bit higher than current, but we're seeing extreme greed across most of the major indicators at this point. Momentum, strength, breadth. Put call ratios hovering kind of in a neutral zone here around 0.75, and volatility continues to contract just slightly, still neutral there. But safe haven demand, that's stepped into greed now. Junk bonds, I think this is going to hover here for a while in extreme fear. This is still normalizing from the rate cut, so we'll see how this plays over the next couple of weeks. But just about all the major indicators are in greed or extreme greed, and that's definitely a little bit concerning. Moving over to seasonality, we were supposed to see a little bit of a down day today. We didn't really get that. It was mostly flat, slightly bullish, but understand this is a bearish period up through the end of this week. And so far, seasonality has been pretty reliable this month. And just to take a little bit closer look at that, the week after quad witching has been down 26 of the last 34, with an average loss of around 1% for the rest of that week. But this is the end of the September weakness period as part of the institutional portfolio restructuring. Moving over to the economic calendar, global manufacturing PMI, not great there. Composite PMI, pretty good. Services PMI, pretty good. Eurozone numbers, not great either. So manufacturing and real economy things seem to be slowing while services continue to hold up pretty well. We do get consumer confidence tomorrow at 10 o'clock. That'll be relatively interesting. And then for Wednesday, just new home sales, not a ton of data this week. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, you can see 3 days in a row of basically flat price action after we got that gap up here on Thursday last week. Hanging man candle on Friday with huge volume. Ended up holding this trend line here today, slightly positive 0.28. That's a new all-time high close, not a new all-time high wick. Momentum still hanging out there. I think this is going to turn down. I thought it might do it today, but really tomorrow. It's basically flat, 14.04 up to 15.16. That is a really small step. Usually you see ones and twos at least, so pretty small step there. We'll see how it plays in tomorrow's. RSI relatively flat. As long as the trend line holds up, we're in good shape. That's at 57.10. We're above that by just 8 points. And then looking at it here on the short time frames, you can see on that hourly, the big move up on Thursday, dipped low here on Friday, rallied back up. You could argue this is a little bit of a lower high, starting to roll over here after hours. If it falls, your support is still that 565 level. And I'll probably add some levels to this here tomorrow. The highs up around 569.80 seems like a reasonable level. That was pretty much the low of this slight consolidation from that Thursday session. So 569.70 seems to be a little bit of a zone. 565.16 is your support. And you can see here on the hourly chart that momentum is pretty weak. Continuing to roll. It's pretty weak throughout the day, really. And we broke below the SMA. Mondays tend to have pretty low volume, so I didn't really expect a whole lot. But this looks pretty weak going into tomorrow, especially if that 55 EMA breaks there at 568.40. Moving over to the Tasty charts here for the SPY, you can see we're right at that 8 EMA on the 4-hour chart. That is 468.87, critical zone right there. If that breaks down, we're headed to the midline at least. That's at 567.14, so pretty tight range there now. And then your next one would be 565 at the 34 EMA. We are still seeing these ATR trailing stops continue to rally here. That is very interesting to me. You don't really like to see these kind of rally here while stock is kind of holding a pretty flat zone, which it has been for 3 days at this point. Usually when that happens, you're going to get a kind of a breakdown, see that change of conditions, get the retest, and then a continuation lower, kind of similar to this right here. So you get a little bit of a consolidation. You see those ATRs moving up. You get the big breakdown. You're now in bearish conditions, get the retracement, consolidation, and then you get the breakdown. That is a pretty textbook setup here, and that is something that I would be looking for another iteration of right here. Breakdown, take out the ATRs, get the retracement, continuation lower. Moving over to the NASDAQ, pretty much the same thesis, 0.3 to the upside, really just gapped up and dojied. We're still at the trend line. Trend line is sitting at 19,800. Momentum, slight step up here, a little bit better, honestly, on the NASDAQ versus the SPY. It did outperform last week. Maybe that's going to continue here. We're right at this previous high from mid-August. The high of that candle was up around the 19,927 area. The actual high was 19,938. So that gives you just a little bit more room, about another 80 points or so. And we'll see if we can get there. That was basically the high from Thursday as well. And then looking at those shorter time frames, very similar to the SPY. You can see big rally Thursday, dip low on Friday, held those levels, big wick low on the pre-market here, and then topped out right around that 483.97, 484 area. And then we started to pull back. The fact that we did break the highs from Friday and then rejected off of there was not great. You can see that big down candle on the 11 o'clock candle. Again, support 481.94, and then you got the 55 EMA sitting there at 481.32. Moving over to the Tasty charts here for the NASDAQ, you can see this sideways consolidation still holding right at that 8 EMA. That is 482.50. After hours, we're just a smidgen below it at 482.44. On the daily close, though, it's 483.04. So we're above it during the session, dipping slightly after hours. Again, look at the volume, very little volume, even for a Monday. ATR stops rolling up here during this sideways consolidation, so we're still hanging in there. At this point, I would expect a little bit of a pullback, 479.98, 480 right in there, so about a 0.5% down move. We'll see what happens once we get there. Probably going to get a little bit of a hold, I would suspect, at least for the next day or two. But if it breaks through there, then 477.59 is your next level, and then the next ATR level would be 476.50. So a couple of points in there. Right now, it's still holding in this consolidation right at the highs from that 21-22 August candle. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell again falling just a little bit here, 0.37. Took out the trend line, took out the level 221.49. It's down a little bit more after hours. Going to be watching this one closely here. You can see I'm watching these levels. Wouldn't shock me to get a gap fill, maybe even two, all the way down to the 217.55 area. But we're going to need this lower trend line to hold if it's going to hold this overall structure. So support right now is 217.68. Need this zone to hold, need these EMAs to hold. It's definitely extended, slight pullback, need that structure to stay intact. And then looking at the Dow, very similar to the S&Ps and the NASDAQ, stuck between these two trend lines, still holding support there. For tomorrow, that would be 420.16. Moving over to some stocks that moved here today, we got Micron as well as Intel. Both of these seem to have a little bit of a solid base, bottom, double bottom. Rally up here, looking for that 55 EMA up at 102.72. That would put you right in line with these lows from back here at the end of July. Seems like a good price target. Momentum ramping, RSI ramping. This looks like a pretty good setup, honestly. Again, price target 102.72 right here. You got the 200 just behind it, 105.12. That looks like a nice clean move there. And then looking at Intel, look at this volume. Huge volume over the last couple days. And then we got another bull candle, 3.3%. And it does look like it's headed towards that 55 EMA as well at 24.64, my level 25.14. It's cleared this kind of midpoint here of this consolidation, and it does seem to have a little bit more bullishness. RSI looks good, momentum looks good. So it seems like semiconductors are finding a little bit of a base and some rally. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft here, we got both of these falling on the day, 0.76 and 0.4 respectively. Apple getting below this trend line here, pretty critical. We're watching that zone going into the day. It's broken now. 224.36 is your next support. Seems like this is going to be sideways consolidation. If these zones start to break, however, that could be quite bearish. You can see that huge volume we had on Friday. We talked about it on Friday in the weekend video. Huge volume selling, and it's continuing to sell. Not a good indicator. 230.28 was the level, and we rejected powerfully off of that. And then similarly here, looking at Microsoft, you can see rejected off of 440.72. We're selling here. This looks a little bit better. The level is 429.88. Need that zone to hold. Tested the 9 EMA. Selling a little bit after hours, but look at that momentum. 2 steps to bearish. Usually you get a little bit of follow through off of that. So right now, both of these look not so great, and usually they take markets with them. These are the largest stocks in the world. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla continues to rocket, 4.94%. Price target is still 255.44. If that breaks, 264.68. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. I think this has another $5 in it at least, or at least another 2%. Continues to look good. I think that's going to move here. And then NVIDIA, basically flat, 0.22, still in this consolidation. Looks like a high, lower high setup, reject off the trend line, and I do expect this to sell ultimately. Right now it's still holding in the consolidation, but I think it's going to break. Momentum basically flat, RSI hovering just above the SMA. The SMA is trending up a little bit, so that should give it a little bit of support, so see how it plays. overall, I still think this is a high, lower high setup, and I think it's going to sell at least to these previous lows. Moving over to Amazon and Google here. Amazon continuing its run, 1.19%. Still looking for this trend line up here around 200. Pretty decent move. Think it's going to continue. We're getting close to overbought conditions. It's been a run for sure. You can see this move up, bull flag, move up, similar to that previous move that we saw in Microsoft. But right here is the zone that takes you right to these previous highs. And then if it double tops here, that's going to be quite terrible for Amazon. And then look at Google. We've been watching this as a bear setup. It had a big counter trend rally, hit some major zones of resistance. Now it seems to be flattening out. MACD flat for 2 days. Big down candle, about 1%, rejecting off this zone. If we get a continuation lower here, then we're looking for around 159.70. This consolidation of EMAs here. And then if this structure right in this zone breaks, the low being this trend line around 157.85, then we're probably headed back to the 150s area. So this looks like a pretty solid down move. Almost looks like an inverse head and shoulders type setup with a left shoulder head, right shoulder forming. We'll see if that ends up holding. So right now that would be short-term bearish. Ultimately looking for a bottom around that 157 area. If it holds, you could look for a right shoulder and a continuation higher. But right now, like I said, short-term bearish on Alphabet. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples basically flat, momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish, still looking for this to pull back a little bit more. Trend support around 81.64. But look at discretionaries, makes sense. Tesla and Amazon both rallying pretty aggressively today. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, broke that next level, 197.14. Once that broke, you had a pretty solid trade, about a 1% move. Price target for me still 253 since that level broke, with the trend just behind it up around 102.24. Moving over to oil and gas and technology. We've been watching these for a while. These seem to be the most relevant right now. Oil and gas just barely got above my level here, 135.07, closed at 135.14, rejected off the high from that Thursday session. I'll be watching this one closely. I still like it. I still want it to break here and push to 140, but it is a downtrend. You do have to respect that. We've been in the zone before between the 21 and the 55s, and it did reject from there and sell further. Critical zone there at 135.07, so watching this closely. Momentum still bullish, RSI still a little bit bullish. Wouldn't shock me to see a higher low setup and then a continuation, which is why I'm not in it right now, but I do like this setup and I'm watching it. And then looking at technology here, continues to reject off this trend line, more selling, momentum stepping down, RSI still above the SMA, and it is sloping up here slightly, but definitely watching the rejection off that trend line. You can also argue high, lower high, lower high. And if that continues, then we should look for a retest of that 200, which is all the way down at 208.82. Moving over to RIOT and Marathon, both of these had a solid day, 1.95% and 3.4%. Mara continues to be the stronger of the two here, right above that 21, right above VWAP. It's holding the 9 EMA. It held a little bit of a base here. Momentum's back to bullish. RSI is back to bullish. I think this is going to have a swing. I think it has some momentum. I think we can get a continuation there to the 55, up around $18. So a $2 move on a stock like this would give you about a 12% rally. I think there's definitely some potential for a move like that. We've definitely seen moves even more aggressive. So something to watch here. Both of these have a little bit of legs. I don't think RIOT's going to go as crazy, maybe something around the same percentage point, but not quite to that 55 EMA. They've definitely found a little bit of strength. Momentum and RSI on both look good. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth. Both of these caught a little bit of a bounce. Momentum still bullish. RSI still bullish here. We're still in this consolidation. A little bit extended on the 20, 50, still in this kind of high level, but not as extended. 83 is a critical zone. We touched that here on Thursday. Looking to see if it can get up past that into the 92 area. And then once we do, that is really the top of markets. You don't see it go any higher than that pretty much ever. You can see back here, July of 23, hopped out at 89.26. High back here on to January of 24 was 92.44. So once you get into that kind of area, markets typically top out. We're going to see if we can get that last final push into the zone. Still possible. We definitely found a little bit of rejection from the 83 area. Moving over to the dollar here on the hourly and the daily, you can see sideways choppy action, big wick up, big give back, held the 55, found a little bit of rally. To me at this point, this looks like a big move down, very solid move down. This looks like we're in this consolidation. Looks like somebody's taking profits, if I had to guess, off of this big sell. So if they're taking profits, usually that means there's going to be at least a little bit of a buy up after. You can see the step towards bullish momentum, retested some of those levels, need to see the 101.25 level break, RSI back above the SMA, and if we do see this dollar start to rally here, that is usually quite bearish for equities. So something to watch. I've been talking about it, this solid base that we've been seeing form. You could argue triple bottom or double bottom, however you want to look at it, but this is a base of price action. It doesn't seem to be breaking below this 100.63 or 100.54 area. Moving over to JNK and TLT, JNK rejecting off the 97.69 level. That is a little bit of a precursor. It's definitely extended, a little bit of foreshadowing, momentum stepping down, RSI breaking down, big volume happening in this zone. Again, kind of looks like some profit taking at that level. Wouldn't shock me to see this pull back down to the 21 EMA at 96.88, even the next level 96.55, somewhere back in here. See how it plays. Still very much a bull trend, just a little extended in the short term. Similarly on TLT, we're continuing to watch this pull back a little bit. Trend support now is down around 97.56. Momentum's definitely bearish. RSI is definitely bearish. So I'd be a little bit patient here. It's had a really strong run. We've been rallying basically since 91.50 all the way up to the 101.50 area. So that's a big push for bonds. And again, it wouldn't shock me to see a little bit more pullback. Touch some of these zones in here. You even got the 55 down at 96.64. Moving over to the VIX, basically held flat, down 1.61, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, still looking for a touch of that 144 EMA at 15.31, and then my level 14.7, watching that zone there right in line with the 200. So continues to sell. We expected it to, waiting to see what happens once we start to touch these key levels. Moving over to my accounts, I made just a little bit of money. All I did was put these shares back on with a covered call for today at 482. That held up fine, made a little bit of money on that, and then sold the 482s for tomorrow for basically the same price. Holding a little bit of caution based on what we're seeing in the charts. You can see after hours that selling that's happening. IWM, no changes here. These expire in 4 days, so the end of the week now. $5 credit on that position. We're at about 50% profit with this continuing to hold after hours. See how it plays. If it starts to roll down a little bit more, I could roll this down and in just a little bit, maybe to 218 for 3 days from now. We'll see how it plays, maybe 2 days from now. So something to watch for if the IWM continues to sell just a little bit faster. Right now, I'm comfortable where I'm at, just trying to collect some of these credits as markets hover. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the charts today. Are you looking for a little bit of a roll down, or is this a consolidation and pullback in time before we see more rally? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.